I'm happy to see you all. Thank you for the organization, and we are very honored to be here in these beautiful surroundings. Okay, little introduction. We are Sini and Marianna in Finland, Lappeenranta, and we work as a Lappeenranta Museum. I am as a curator of built heritage and Marianna as a regional curator. And in our presentation, we are going to tell you about a little bit more of Lappeenranta historical environment and operational environment also. This presentation has two parts. I will talk about more of the surroundings, historical backgrounds, aspects, and also maintenance of a green cultural living heritage, what we have at the fortress. And Marianna will tell you more about museum's cultural environment and education. Okay? Oh, sorry. Well, shortly, some facts from us and a fortress of Lappeenranta. So, as you can see, we are located southeast part of Finland, and Lappeenranta is commercial center of South Karelian province. We have 73 inhabitants, and we are also known as Lake Saimaa, which is near everywhere in our city. Here and heart of our city, there's fortress area, which is very lively part of our city nowadays. The Lappeenranta fortress is a valuable part of the Finnish, Russian and Swedish cultural heritage. The oldest buildings, including the guardhouse of the main gates, also known Viborg's gates, that nowadays hosts a cavalry museum, the South Karelia Museum, which is located at 18th barrack buildings, the Finland's oldest Orthodox church at the late 18th, and the commandant's house date from the part of maybe 18th century. Most of the wooden buildings and stone are from late 118th, whereas the red brick military barracks are dated from the early 20th century. In Fortress have strong history and cultural vibes with archives, art schools, museums, open-air theatre and many artisan shops also. Fortress is also a home for 90 inhabitants. There's also plenty outdoor activity possibilities and people gather there to spend their time with each others. You could easily say it's nowadays citizens' living room and place to be proud to show. It's also an important operational environment for us who works in the museums. As you can see, there's the city of Lappeenranta. It's spread it wide to the shores of Saimaa. So it's really near of us, the lake. And fortress is the upper picture. It's the kind of ridge, which part of the Saimaa house. Fortress older structures are built in, which we can see, visible structures are in 1720. There is still city plan from late 18th. It's from Russian Emperor time. But we have the new plan, city plan already at the tables, and it should be ready at 2025, but we'll see. Whole area is protected by Antiquities Act and buildings by master plan, which is made in 2014. So that's not old. Okay. A little introduction in fortress history. So, as we know, Lappeenranta is southeastern city of Finland, near the Russian border, 25 kilometers, and by the Lake Saimaa. The town has struggled between the western and eastern powers for centuries. The town was under Swedish governance until 1741, when the Russians captured the fortress from the Swedes in the War of Hats, as they called it. After the war, Lappeenranta became a Russian garrison town until the year 1917, when Finland gained independence. At the crossroads of waterways and roads, the scape of Lappeenranta began to develop as marketplace and a center for the Finnish tar trade in the 16th century. In the 17th century, first the Swedes and then after the war, Russians gradually built the fortress, bastions, barracks and ramparts. Today, of course, the city is much bigger. When fortification and defense strategy was on, inhabitants and administration were forced to move a little further from the garrison, occupied ridge and Saimaa. This happened at the end of 18th. As in many other European towns, cultural history is clear, visible, and buildings in constructions. They are valued and taken care of. The oldest constructions of the Lappeenranta fortress are from the beginning of the 17th century, and most of the buildings are from 19th century. After fortress lost their strategical meaning in year 1809, ramparts, redoubts, and other structures beginning to decay. Russian military kept the position as a garrison, and significant part of the fortress turned into a prison. City of Lappeenranta became as an owner of this fortress area at the 1930s, and fortress became slowly as a decayed backyard with small industrial, still with the prison, and some inhabitants. Inhabitants work at the prison, so they wasn't that outside of the walls, I think. After the last World War and rebuilding times, fortress historical value and unique value was recognized. There were many futuristic plans, of course. We lived in 1716s, but fortunately historical value was stronger and massive restoration project begins. Okay, here you can see there's a modern of Atlas, the end of 17th, and strategical plan for the fortress. This building, it's a little bit over exaggerated, but something like that, yeah. Restoration took 35 years. Aim was to restore fortress into late 18th Russian period, the golden time of the fortress, so to speak. The Swedish era still lies in the west side of the fortress under the ground, where can be found old administration house, bank, that time bank, marketplace and a residence of governor. All have been found in archaeological excavations during restoration. Restoration works begin firstly from south side of Old Park and reach out to the inner walls. Major amount of fundings were used to ramparts, restoration, street paving, renovation of buildings, and also research as archaeological excavations. In 19th, Lappeenranta city took care of constructions of buildings and renovations of buildings, and fundings were used to ramparts, redoubts, and barriers. While the restoration continues, archaeological excavations were made to confirm the shape and exact locations of the ramparts, bastions, gates, walls, and redoubts. Koskinen and Schalin architects made the restoration plans during the 19 and 2000. Before that, Koskinen were planner of fortress restoration at the Finnish Heritage Agency, which also provided the significant funding for restoration works. In 1960, city decided to locate some public services at the fortress area, part of strategy to preserve the area. In 10 years' time, fortress area began to make some serious facelift. In the fortress is approximately 30 buildings which have roofs. First buildings which was ready for restoration was 1978. City archive. It is on old barrack. You can see it here. Old barrack from late of the 18th century. And then was the 3 old barracks at the east side. They are a little bit younger. City renovated 1 building per year. Still, 2 of the 30 buildings wait renovations. Still, they haven't found proper use yet, but they are under protection. Restoration project was finished complete 2006, and I think we hope that someday the western side of the fortress will be discovered again, because now it's only. You cannot see almost anything because everything is under the ground. But we know there's a lot of there. It's a heart of an origin of our town. It's not the only buildings and constructions that remind the fascination stages of history. During the last centuries, the inhabitants of the fortress have carried a wide variety of different plant species with them. In its natural state, the moraine ridge was probably dry boreal pine forest with lingonberries and European blueberries. As soon as the first inhabitants built up their small cottages and settled permanently on the slopes of the ridge, the vegetation started to change. Waste and manure increased eutrophication of soil, trees were felled, and cottages and firewood, and to make cottages and firewood, of course, and animals grazed and humans cultivated the open land. Over the centuries, merchants and travelers brought the new plants that were cultivated and used as a food, medicine, herbs and spice, dyes and pesticides for everyday life. Some of these previously vitally important plants still grow and bloom on the meadows and slopes of the fortress. Especially the time period of 18th century, when the fortress was an active Russian garrison, is clearly visible the vegetation today. The most distinctive examples for the fortress flora arrived accidentally from east with the Russian military troops, who brought grains and horse fodder with them. Mixed with the grains were seeds of other plants from the Russian steppes near the Caspian Sea. In the fortress of Lappeenranta, these seeds found new places to germinate and flourish. So you can say that every summer cultural history literally blooms on the fortress ramparts. And Lappeenranta has committed to protect fortress historical nature as a part of cultural heritage. Recently, many plants and insects have become under threat. Now, alongside with the goal of preserving the cultural landscape, another aim of the management of the ramparts is to maintain a diverse range of grassy vegetation. Lappeenranta has urban meadow network since 2019, and it was the first in Finland, which is a range. Fortress area is one of that meadow networks as a hill meadow. Maintenance of these meadows is quite easy. The slopes are mowed only once in the late summer so that the plants have time to mature their seeds. Thanks to this management, the slopes have warm meadows rich in flora. Rich flora attracts insects, and insects attracts a large number of bird species. Nature in old urban environment can be as rich as in traditional rural biotopes, which are considered as the most biodiverse environments in Finland. Many of the plants living on traditional grazing biotopes need constant management and of landscape to survive. So it's not a problem if people walk on the trails and climb on the hillsides and enjoy views at the Lake Saimaa. Recreational use is not harmful for the vegetation. Character of the fortress for its ramparts is to be respectful towards history, but also to nature. We know approximately 450 plant species at the area, and there's some threatened species as well. Top of the fortress, where most of the buildings are, yards are with the grass and more garden-like. Still there's left mowed horse radish, saponaria and henbane, and yellow willow grass, as we can see here. But we, citizens and city, together want to cherish these plants alongside with fortress cultural history. Okay, so here's what we call as a green living cultural history. Okay, thank you. Marianna continues.
Yes, okay. I'm going to continue and tell you something about some viewpoints about environmental education. Okay, yes. And also I'm going to tell you about those cultural environment walks we have organized lately in Fortress area. So at first, why should environmental education be a part of cultural environment work? Oh, okay. At first, promoting environmental awareness is a part of Lappeenranta city strategies. As part of the city organization, we also have to do our part in sustainable development. And in particular, we promote aspects of cultural and social sustainable development, such as physical and economical accessibility of cultural services and promoting local identity and so on. And that's the main part of our operations. And cultural environment as a learning environment. We think that cultural environment is a learning environment in which learning kind of take place through visible and invisible structures, buildings, cultural plants, details and use. It's a huge bank of information, stories and possibilities to learn from the past. A different environment allows different kinds of learning. The variable environment and guided tours and other audience engagement, they together build interdisciplinarity and crosses boundaries between sciences. A historical environment as a basis of activities makes it easier to create discussion and promote different views. Going out of everyday environment encourages multimodality in learning. At cultural environment, various historical stages and details and various learning methods help to keep up the learners' interest, imagination and creativity. There's room for investigation, room to play and room to learn. And when you are learning in public space, surroundings leave room for the learner's own thoughts and own memories and stories and experiences, as well as promotes both personal thinking and also collective actions and sharing. So next to the cultural heritage, there's loads of opportunities to interaction and sense-making, reflecting and doing. That is the thing which gives visitor the feeling that his or her own knowledge is appreciated, and on the other hand creates a desire to learn something new. So, about the fortress as a place for environmental education. Why should environmental education be organized by museums in cultural environmental places like Lappeenranta Fortress? And what do these surroundings especially have to give to sustainable development training? The fortress, at first, all the cultural environments tell something about the society and challenges of their own time. The fortress and its buildings and structures can serve as symbols and visible information about historical events, continuities and life in the past. They offer a perspective in development and change of society, industries and social structures. They give clues from human influence, the use of the environment at different times and science human creativity, competence and problem-solving abilities. Second, the cultural environment also offers space to reflect on the effects of human activity. How the environment is built and preserved. What is the role of the fortress in the local identity? What kind of cultural capital is there within the region or in society? And how to strengthen it, or how is sustainability thinking reflected in buildings and in the environment? As a changing urban environment, it's also a place to awake environmental curiosity and to find ways to influence the future. Old buildings and structures, cultural plants, etc., of course tell about the past and the present, but they also can bring out different ideas or images of the future. They have a kind of hidden ability to challenge prevailing ideas, to look at them from a new perspective. And last but not least, education in cultural environment strengthens local identity. So this environment forces you to think who has lived there and how have they influenced the environment, who I am, and what is my environment like, what does the future look like and how can I influence it. And as we all know, those guided tours and workshops and other audience engagement is the way to connect the cultural environment with everyday experiences and the audience, and to wake them to observe the environment and to influence it. So next I'm going to tell you a bit about our cultural environment work in the fortress. And we organize two kinds of guided walks in fortress area. One is called Cobblestones and Views, and it's about cultural environment of the fortress in different ages. And then we have this Death and Ghosts tour, and it's about the dark history of the fortress. And those goals of the guided walks are to encourage participants to observe the everyday environment and to pay attention to different historical layers and changes and details, and also to bring out the story tradition, and that's related to the fortress. And the main themes on the works are cultural environment and the human interaction with it, and change in the landscape, and also the use of those environmental education methods, and of course this story tradition. So, with those guided walks, we approach the cultural environment through the senses and stories. The aim of the approaching is to encourage skills like creative and critical thinking, but also to support our audience's engagement to the environment and to encourage them to observe and understand the fortress and the history of Lappeenranta city in a new way. And what we do during those walks, we are studying environment through body and movement. How do those cobblestones feel on the main road, or what it's like to walk uphill, or how does it feel to touch wall stones and so on. And how does the environment sound? Through storytelling, we get to know the sounds of the marketplace in the past and then compare them to the sounds of the modern city and reflect how the soundscape has changed. And then we study cultural plants preserved from the past, how they smell and whether they are still used today, or what did a tar or fish smell in the marketplace, and so on. And also those buildings and structures from the past can still be seen on the landscape, but there's also some, as Sini told earlier, also those invisible archaeological remains that are resting underground. So with help of the imagination, we are trying to imagine what the fortress looked like in the past centuries. And we are also thinking those changes in the purpose of that leads to a change in the landscape. The fortress has changed from natural environment to marketplace and from military town to tourist destination. So the change still continues. There's new plans and new residential areas and infrastructure and new tourism and so on. So since this changing is continuous, it's important to think that how I can influence my environment in the future. And those methods of environmental education are specifically suitable for this purpose. And at the end, I would like to share some thoughts that audience who has taken part on those guided walks has left. And these have been picked from the feedback some participants gave after the Cobblestones and Views tour. So I think that this tells quite well that we have succeeded in raising some new ideas about the cultural environment and made those participants pay attention to things they might not have noticed before. So, thank you.